The ambush at Crimson Canyon. The twin sons of Caravan cast long shadows across Crimson Canyon as Vexera positioned her warriors. Her azure skin shimmered with ceremonial markings patterns of her lineage, telling the story of 12 generations of the Tessari clan. She adjusted the crystalline blade at her hip, the last heirloom of her mother's rule, before the humans had taken everything. "Commander, the caravan approaches," whispered Jex, her most loyal fighter. 6 transport vehicles, minimal guard rotation. "They're not expecting us." Vexera nodded, her elongated pupils contracting against the harsh desert light. "This shipment carries more than supplies. Intelligence suggests they transport the ancient resonance crystals stolen from the Temple of Ancestors." The crystals were everything power sources, cultural treasures, and according to legend, the key to reclaiming their ancestral lands. Without them, her people would continue their slow death in the unforgiving wastelands. The humans had no right to them. "Remember," she said to her squad of 15, "we take what is ours and leave no witnesses. The desert will hide their bones as it has hidden ours for generations." From her vantage point atop the red stone ridge, Vexera could see the dust cloud of the approaching caravan. The familiar rage burned within her, the same fire that had kept her alive since watching humans slaughter her mother during the night of fallen stars. Her tendrils of silvery hair coiled tightly against her skull, a physical manifestation of her tension. As the lead transport rumbled into the narrow passage, Vexera gave the signal. Explosive charges detonated, sending massive boulders crashing down to block the convoy's retreat. Simultaneously, her warriors emerged from hiding places, their camouflage, cloaks falling away to reveal their battle armor. This was the moment she lived for, the terror in human eyes when they realized they faced the vengeance of the Tessari. Vexera leapt from her position, the augmented tendons in her legs propelling her 20 feet through the air. She landed atop. The lead vehicle with practiced precision, her blade already drawn. The roof hatch burst open, and she prepared to claim her first kill. But instead of fear, she found herself staring into calm brown eyes. A human man with sun-bronzed skin and dark hair, streaked with desert dust, stood before her, completely unarmed. He smiled, not the grimace of terror she expected, not the hateful sneer of defiance she'd seen 100 times before. A genuine smile that reached his eyes that held recognition. "Vexera Nai Tessari," he said, pronouncing her full ceremonial name with perfect inflection. "I've been hoping to find you." Her blade wavered. No human should know that name. The shock disrupted her concentration, just long enough for chaos to erupt around them. Her warriors, seeing her hesitation, broke formation in confusion. "Who are you?" she demanded, pressing the crystal edge against his throat. "Naren Salus," he replied, still maintaining that infuriating calm. "We met once in the Neutral Valley during the last harvest treaty. You taught me how to track desert lizards." "Impossible. That was 15 cycles ago, a diplomatic mission her mother had insisted on, bringing young Vexera to observe human customs. Before the betrayal, before the war, before she became the scourge of the wastes." "You lie," she hissed, but a fragment of memory surfaced, a human boy with kind eyes, sharing water from his canteen. "I have something that belongs to your people," Naren continued. "Something more valuable than crystals, the truth." Around them, the skirmish intensified. She had seconds to decide: kill him and continue the raid, or listen to impossible words from a human who somehow remembered her name. Memories in moonlight, the twin moons of Caravan cast an ethereal glow across the hidden alcove where Vexera held Naren captive. She had made a split-second decision during the chaos of the ambush, ordering her warriors to take what supplies they could while she personally dealt with the lead human. Only Jex had given her a suspicious glance as she bound Naren's hands and dragged him away from the convoy. You've risked everything bringing me here, Naren said, watching as she paced before him. Your warriors will question why you didn't. Kill me on sight. Silence, Vexera commanded, her tendrils undulating with agitation. You will explain how you know my name, and then perhaps I'll grant you a quicker death than most humans deserve. Naren leaned back against the stone wall of their shelter, surprisingly at ease for a captive. 15 cycles ago. The Neutral Valley. The Harvest Treaty. A child's memory, she dismissed. I was 12. You were perhaps 14 by human standards. He continued undeterred. Your mother, Queen Sarazia, brought you to observe the diplomatic exchange. You wore ceremonial silver plates in your tendrils that chimed when you moved. Vexera stilled. Those details weren't common knowledge. The adults argued for days, Naren said, his voice softening with reminiscence. But we children, we found better things to do. Despite herself, Vexera's mind drifted back. The gathering had been tedious posturing adults trying to divide. Resources neither side truly wanted to share. She had slipped away out of boredom, exploring the strange neutral territory where both species could briefly coexist. You found me trying to catch desert gliders, Naren continued. I was terrible at it. You laughed at my technique. You made too much noise, Vexera murmured, the memory surfacing unexpectedly, stomping around like a sand beast. Naren smiled. You showed me how to follow their heat trails in the sand. By the third day, I could catch them almost as quickly as you could. The memory crystallized 4 days of freedom from responsibility, from the weight of being heir to the Tazari. 4 days with a human boy who asked endless questions about her world, who shared dried fruit from distant human settlements, who looked at her without fear or judgment. We watched the eclipse together, she said, the words escaping before she could stop them from the high cliffs. We did. Narene's eyes reflected the moonlight. And you told me about the Tazari creation myth, how your people believe they were born when the moons aligned and touched the ancient sea. Vexera turned away, emotion threatening to crack her carefully maintained facade. That was before. The massacre of Singing Stones, Naren finished. Before humans broke the treaty and attacked your people's most sacred site. Her hand flew to her blade. You dare speak of it? I speak of it because it's why I'm here. His eyes held hers. Vexera, what if everything you believe about that day is wrong? She scoffed. I saw the aftermath with my own eyes. My mother executed. For provoking the attack, our temples desecrated. And I've spent the last 10 cycles investigating what really happened, Naren said. After I returned to the settlement and learned what had occurred, I couldn't believe the same people who had taught me about farming and medicine could commit such atrocities. Humans are capable of anything, she spat. As are the Tazari, he countered. As are the shadow merchants who profit from our conflict. Vexera's tendrils coiled tightly, a sign of intense emotion among her people. What are you saying? I'm saying that in my transport, the one your warriors are currently looting, I carry evidence that neither humans nor Tazari initiated the massacre. There was a third party involved, one that has manipulated both our peoples for generations. Outside, the first traces of dawn began to appear on the horizon. Soon, Vexera would need to return to her clan with explanations about the raid, about this human captive, about why she hadn't simply executed him as protocol demanded. Prove it, she challenged. Naren leaned forward. Take me to the ancient Echo's temple. What I need to show you is there hidden beneath both our histories, waiting to be uncovered. Vexera knew the Temple Forbidden's territory now claimed. By neither species, but avoided due to strange electromagnetic disturbances. Going there with a human would be considered treason, but the memory of those 4 days in the neutral valley of genuine connection before the world shattered tugged at something long buried within her. If you're lying, she said, drawing. Her blade, "I will personally carve out your heart." Naren nodded. "I would expect nothing less." Truth Among Ruins, the ancient Echo's temple, rose from the sand like the skeleton of some massive, forgotten beast. Crumbling spires twisted toward the sky, their surfaces etched with symbols neither human nor Tazaria, third language, older than both civilizations. Vexra led the way through the ruins, every sense alert for danger. The electromagnetic disturbances that plagued this place made communications equipment useless and disoriented most visitors. But Veshera had trained herself to navigate by the ancient stone markers alone. "The temple predates both our peoples on this world," she said, not looking back at Naren, who followed several paces behind, his hands still bound before him. "My ancestors believed it was built by the Forerunners, those who seeded Caravan, before departing to the stars." "Humans have similar myths," Naren replied. "The first architects, we call them." The air grew colder as they descended into the central chamber, a massive domed space supported by columns carved to resemble twisting vines. At the center stood a circular platform with a depression that resembled a keyhole. "This is why you wanted to come here?" Vexera asked skeptically. Naren nodded. "Will you untie me now? What I need to show you requires both hands." After a moment's hesitation, Vexera cut his bonds. Naren rubbed his wrists, then reached into his tunic, extracting a small crystalline device, one of the sacred resonance crystals her people revered. "You stole this from my people," she accused, hand flying to her blade. "No," Naren said firmly. "This came from the human archives. It was found during the initial settlement expedition, long before the conflicts began." He approached the central platform carefully. "When I began investigating the Singing Stones massacre, I found references to these crystals in both human and Tazari historical records, but neither side understood their true purpose." Naren placed the crystal into the depression on the platform. For a moment, nothing happened. Then a low hum began to vibrate through the chamber, and light erupted from the crystal, spreading along channels in the floor that had been invisible moments before. The air above the platform shimmered, and a holographic projection materialized, a recording so ancient that Vexera felt her breath catch. The figures displayed were neither human nor Tezari, but tall, luminescent beings with translucent skin. "Forerunners," she whispered. The beings spoke in a language she couldn't understand, but somehow the crystal translated, their words appearing as text in both human and Tazari scripts around the projection. "This is the final warning. Read the translation. Caravan was never meant for permanent settlement. The planetary core becomes unstable in cycles of approximately 5,000 years. The resonance crystals were placed as stabilizers, not as tools or weapons. If removed from their chambers, the destabilization will accelerate." Naren looked at Vexera. "This recording is dated nearly 5,000 years ago, according to the translation matrix. What does this have to do with the massacre?" Vexera demanded, though a cold dread was already forming in her stomach. Naren adjusted the crystal, and the hologram shifted, showing a different recording, this one much more recent. Vexera recognized the sacred grounds of the Singing Stones. The timestamp indicated it was taken the day of the massacre. The footage showed neither human soldiers nor Tezari guardians initiating the conflict. Instead, shadowy figures moved among both groups, planting devices, firing the first shots from hidden positions. Their features were obscured, but their movements were neither human nor Tezari, something else entirely. "The Shadow Merchants," Naren said quietly. "A third species that arrived on Caravan centuries ago. They discovered the truth about the planet's instability and the purpose of the crystals. Rather than warning both our peoples, they've been orchestrating conflicts, using the chaos to collect the resonance crystals themselves. For what purpose? Vexera asked, her voice barely audible. The crystals can stabilize more than just planets. Naren explained. They're the most powerful energy source in this sector of the galaxy. The shadow merchants have been harvesting them, leaving Caravan to its fate while our peoples destroy each other. Vexera sank to her knees, the weight of this revelation crushing down upon her. Everything her mother's execution, her life of vengeance, the blood on her hands, all of it orchestrated by an unseen enemy. My mother suspected something, she whispered. Before she died, she told me to seek the truth beyond the veil. I thought it was just the rambling of a defeated queen. Naren knelt beside her, close but not touching. Both our peoples have been pawns in a game we didn't know we were playing. And meanwhile, the planet's core grows more unstable. The tremors that have been increasing over the past cycle, they're not natural. Caravan is dying. How many know of this? She asked. Among humans? A small faction, including myself. We've been trying to gather evidence, to convince our leadership. But the shadow merchants have infiltrated both our societies deeply. Those who discover too much tend to disappear. Vexera looked up at the hologram still playing above them, the ancient warning of a doomed world, a message ignored for millennia. The supply convoy you are protecting, she said slowly. It wasn't just carrying this crystal, was it? Naren shook his head. It was carrying the schematics for a planetary stabilization device. Using the remaining resonance crystals, we might be able to buy Caravan more time enough to evacuate both humans and Tezari before the core collapse. In that moment, Vexera understood the true magnitude of Naren's mission and why he had sought her out specifically. He needed more than just a Tezari ally. He needed someone with influence, someone who could convince her people of this impossible truth. The clan leaders will never believe this without proof, she said. Naren gestured to the hologram. Then we bring them proof. Divided loyalties dawn broke over the Tezari encampment as Vexera strode through the maze of tents and temporary structures. Naren walking beside her unbound, but drawing hostile stares from every warrior they passed. The raid's spoils had been distributed food, medicine, weapons, but tension hung in the air like the desert heat. Word had spread quickly that the clan commander had taken a human captive instead of executing him on sight. Your warriors wish to kill me, Naren observed quietly. Yes, Vexera replied, as do the clan elders waiting for us in the central pavilion. The evidence they'd retrieved from the ancient Echoes temple, the crystal containing the recordings felt heavy in the pouch at her hip. What they were about to attempt bordered on sacrilege, challenging the foundation of Tezari hatred toward humans, questioning the very narrative that had sustained her people through cycles of warfare. Jex intercepted them before they reached the pavilion, his normally stoic face contorted with barely controlled rage. Commander, the council demands an explanation, he hissed. You bring a human into our sanctuary? After what they did to your mother? To our people? What if what we believe happened didn't actually occur as we've been told? Vexera asked, meeting his gaze steadily. Jex's secondary eyelids fluttered in confusion. What poison has this human fed you? Truth is often more poisonous than lies, old friend, she replied. Attend the council meeting. You deserve to witness what I've discovered. Inside the pavilion, 5 clan elders sat in a semicircle, their age-silvered tendrils adorned with the ceremonial beads of leadership. Elder Crozel, her mother's former advisor, and now the most respected voice among the Tezari, fixed Vexera with a penetrating stare. Vexera Nai Tezari, he intoned formally, you dishonor your mother's memory by bringing human filth into our midst. With respect, Elder, she replied with equal formality, I bring information that may save what remains of our people. For the next hour, Vexera and Naren presented their evidence, the ancient warnings, the footage of the massacre, the truth about the resonance crystals and Caravan's impending destruction. As the final hologram faded, silence engulfed the pavilion. Elder Crozel was the first to speak. "Convenient propaganda," he said dismissively, "created by humans to absolve themselves of guilt. The technology in that crystal predates both our civilizations," Naren countered. "Neither humans nor Tazari could have fabricated it. Yet you expect us to trust a human?" Another elder challenged. "To form an alliance with those who have hunted us to near extinction?" "I expect you to survive," Vexera said sharply. "The ground." Tremors grow stronger each day. The crystal resonance readings confirm what the ancient warning stated. Caravan's core is destabilizing. Within one cycle, this world will become uninhabitable. Elder Crozel rose, his tall frame imposing despite his age. "Even if what you say is true, why should we trust humans now? Their settlements have ships, technology, means of escape. We have nothing but our territory and what remains of our heritage." "Because the human leadership doesn't believe us either," Naren said quietly. "Those who profit from this conflict, both human profiteers and these shadow merchants, have too much influence. I came to Vexera because I need allies who understand what's at stake." A commotion outside interrupted the tense exchange. A Tazari scout burst into the pavilion, breathing heavily. Human military forces approached from the east. At least 30 vehicles, heavily armed. Jex turned accusingly toward Naren. "You led." "Them here?" "Impossible," Naren protested. "My convoy was supposed to maintain radio silence." Unless they were tracking you all along," Vexera finished, realization dawning. "The shadow merchants have agents among your people too." "Elder." Crozel's expression hardened. "This meeting is concluded. Vexera, execute this human spy immediately. All warriors prepare for defense." Vexera stood frozen, caught between duty and truth. Executing Naren would restore her standing among her people, erase the doubts that had formed about her leadership. Yet it would also destroy perhaps the only chance of saving both their species. "Commander," Jex urged, hand on his weapon. "Your orders?" Outside, the warning horns began to sound. They had minutes, perhaps less, before the human forces arrived. Naren met her gaze steadily. "Whatever you decide," he said, "remember what we saw in the temple. This planet is dying. Our peoples can die with it, fighting over ashes, or we can find another way." In that moment, Vexera saw not the human before her, but the boy from 15 cycles ago, curious, kind, unwilling to accept the boundaries adults had created. She thought of her mother's final words. Seek the truth beyond the veil. Perhaps this was what she had meant. "Jex," she said firmly, "evacuate the young and the elders through the western tunnels. All warriors to defensive positions, but no one attacks until I give the command." She turned to Naren. "You claimed your convoy carried schematics for a stabilization device. Where are they now?" "Hidden," he replied, "in case I was captured or killed. I can retrieve them, but not alone." Vexera nodded once, decision made. "Then we go together. The rest of you buy us time." Elder Crozel's voice rose in outrage. "This is treason, Vexera Naitazari. You betray your people." "No," she replied, her voice steady. "For the first time since my mother died, I'm truly serving them." As she led Naren toward the secret exit at the rear of the pavilion, the first, explosions shook the ground human artillery finding its range. The war she'd fought her entire adult life was reaching its crescendo, but Vexera was no longer certain who the true enemy was, or if victory meant what she had always believed it did. Horizons promised the stabilization facility hummed with energy as Vexera positioned the last resonance crystal into its chamber. 3 days of non-stop work had transformed the abandoned Forerunner outpost into what might be Caravan's last hope. Outside, the twin suns cast long shadows across a landscape increasingly torn by tremors fissures, opening in the desert floor, releasing ancient gases trapped for millennia beneath the surface. Power levels at 87%, called. Dara, a human scientist who had defected from the military, along with a handful of others who believed Narene's evidence. Her dark hair was tied back in a practical knot, her fingers moving deftly across control panels designed for hands neither human nor Tezee. I. Dot in the corner of the chamber. Wounded warriors from both species rested side by side, reluctant allies, forged in the chaos of the past 72 hours. The human military assault on the Tezari camp had been merely the beginning. Once Vexura and Naren had escaped with the schematics, the shadow merchants had finally emerged from hiding, attacking both human settlements and Tezari encampments with devastating precision. Their strategy was always the same, Naren explained, joining Vexura at the main control platform. Divide, conquer, and collect the crystals while we destroyed each other. When they realized we'd discovered the truth, they abandoned subtlety for direct action. Vexura's normally immaculate armor was scorched and dented from multiple engagements. Her right tendril cluster had been partially severed in close combat with a shadow merchant assassin, a wound that would never fully heal, marking her permanently as different among her people. If any of her people survived what was coming, the core destabilization has accelerated, she said, studying the holographic projection of the planet's interior. We have perhaps 6 hours before catastrophic failure begins. The evacuation ships? Naren asked. Elder Krozel reports 3,000 Tizari have reached the southern launch site. Your General Patton confirms 7,000 humans at the northern facility. She hesitated. It's not enough. Not nearly enough. The combined population of Caravan both species numbered nearly 2 million. The evacuation ships cobbled together from both fleets could carry perhaps 15,000. The stabilization device was never meant to save Caravan permanently, Naren reminded her gently, just to buy time for more evacuations. And if it fails entirely? He had no answer for that. Jex entered the control room, his once pristine ceremonial armor now patchwork with repairs. Despite his initial resistance, he had become one of their most valuable allies, coordinating joint defense forces against the Shadow Merchants' attacks. Commander, he reported, our scouts have detected a Shadow Merchant vessel approaching from the east, much larger than any we've encountered before. They're coming for the remaining crystals, Vexura concluded. They know what we're attempting. The facility shuddered as another groundquake rippled through the region. A support beam crashed down in the adjacent chamber, followed by shouts and the sounds of emergency response. We're out of time, Naren decided. We need to activate the device now, even at reduced efficiency. Vexura looked at the faces around her Tezari warriors, who had followed her into what many considered treason. Human scientists and soldiers, who had defied their own leadership to support this desperate gamble. Faces that, just days ago, she would have considered enemies worthy only of death. Begin the activation sequence, she ordered Dot as Dara and her team initiated the complex startup procedure. Naren moved closer to Vexura, his voice low enough that only she could hear. No matter what happens, he said, finding you again was worth it. The bitter irony wasn't lost on her that it had taken the impending destruction of their world to bridge the chasm between them. 15 cycles lost to a conflict engineered by outsiders who saw their peoples as nothing but obstacles to be removed. We should have caught more desert gliders together, she replied, allowing herself a rare moment of vulnerability. The facility lights dimmed as power redirected to the stabilization device. The central chamber began to glow with ethereal blue, light as the resonance crystals activated, connecting to their counterparts still embedded deep in Caravan's mantle. On the monitoring screens, the planet's core fluctuations began to smooth. the deadly buildup of pressure finding release through carefully calibrated energy channels. Not a permanent solution, but a reprieve. "It's working," Dara exclaimed. Core temperature dropping 2%, 4%. A violent explosion rocked the facility's exterior. The shadow merchants had arrived. "Checks defensive positions," Vexora commanded. "They cannot be allowed to disrupt the process." "How long until stabilization is complete?" Naren asked Dara. "At least 30 minutes for minimum effectiveness. An hour for optimal results." Another explosion, closer this time. The facility's ancient shields would not hold for long against determined attack. Vexora unsheathed her crystal blade. "You and your team complete the stabilization," she told Naren. "I'll lead the defense." He caught her arm. "Vexora, this is what I was trained for," she said with a grim smile. "Fighting impossible odds." For a heartbeat, time seemed suspended between them all, the unspoken possibilities, the future they might have shared in another reality. Then Naren did something no human had ever dared before. He pressed his forehead to hers, the most intimate gesture in Tezari culture, the sharing of thoughts between kindred spirits. "When this is over," he said, "we'll find each other again. In this world or whatever comes after." Vexora permitted herself one moment to memorize his face, then turned to her warriors. "For Caravan," she called, raising her blade dot as they moved toward the facility's entrance. The ground beneath their feet finally steadied for the first time in days. The stabilization was beginning to take effect. Outside, through the reinforced windows, Vexora could see the massive shadow merchant vessel hovering above the desert floor, disgorging troops and heavy weapons. Yet beyond it, on the horizon where the twin suns were setting, evacuation ships rose into the crimson sky carrying the first wave of refugees, both human and Tezari, toward the stars. Whatever happened in the coming hours, some would survive. Some would remember the truth. Some would build something new, beyond the shadows of manufactured hatred. Vexora Nai Tezari, daughter of a fallen queen and commander of a desperate last, stepped into the fading light of Caravan's final sunset. For the first time since childhood, she felt the weight of vengeance lift from her shoulders, replaced by something both lighter and more powerful. Hope. As the shadow merchants advanced across the sand, she thought not of killing, but of protecting. Not of past grievances, but of future possibilities. And as the battle began, she fought not just for her people, or for Narene's, but for what they might become together if they survived long enough to find out. Behind her, the stabilization device pulsed with ancient power, buying precious time for a world on the brink. Ahead, an enemy that had manipulated both species for generations finally faced them united. And somewhere beyond the bloodshed and destruction, a new horizon awaited, one that neither humans nor Tezari had ever dared to imagine, but that Vexora could now see clearly. A horizon where the desert gliders flew free, and those who once hunted each other instead hunted them side by side, smiling beneath alien suns.